there, everyone. I'm Darieth Chisholm. Welcome to Hustle and Heart TV. You know, having a successful advertising campaign is really a combination of a few things. Having a simple message directed to your intended audience, and then having the ability to deliver what it is that you're talking about. My next guest, a really recognizable attorney here in the city of Pittsburgh, Edgar Snyder, will tell you that that's exactly how he's built his successful law practice. He sits down with me to tell me more about his story, his exit strategy, and how to bust past your fears. Up next on Hustle and Heart TV. Like so many entrepreneurs, I'm drawn to the glamorous, gorgeous, larger-than-life, iconic ideas and outcomes that represent success. I'm amazed at just what it takes to truly be a standout, a rock star, a millionaire, a trendsetter. It ain't easy, but somebody's got to do it. So why not you? I know it takes hard work and hustle to make things happen, but I also believe it's a matter of heart. We can manifest our greatest desires with a little less sweat equity and a little more divine guidance. Plus, be equally inspired by someone else's life story. I'm Darieth Chisholm. I'm here to help you unleash, unlock, and bloom your dreams in business and in life. I'm a speaker, author, entrepreneur, life and business coach, media personality, and video podcast host. Every week, my team and I uncover dynamic, authentic, heartfelt conversations to help you leverage tools and resources, make more money, live the lifestyle of your dreams, become a rock star, and love your journey. Edgar Snyder, thank you so much for being a part of Hustle and Heart TV. It is such a pleasure to be here with you.
My pleasure.
This is going to be an incredible half hour. We've got a lot of things to talk about, but let's start with this, because I think what's most interesting is how does one build such a successful law practice over 50 years in the city of Pittsburgh?
First thing that I would say is you can't intend to do it. It was never my idea to do it. It wasn't something that I ever thought of. It naturally happened in the progression of the last 50 years of my career, so that how does one do it? There's no plan. You have to kind of, I don't want to say fall into it, but it's probably that basic, that you do just play each part as it comes along in your career, and you don't think about it, and it's not a master plan. If I had a master plan, I never could have pulled it off.
Lawyers, though, as we think about it, have careers that span, several years, obviously, and some of them being years where perhaps they are very successful and maybe some lean years, but you've really evolved into what some people might consider a celebrity here in the Pittsburgh area, but you've also taken your law practice from criminal to, obviously with advertising.
Right.
and supporting others.
Yeah,
And so,
I think the big reason, Darieth, is that advertising became legal in 1979 by the United States Supreme Court. Before that, you couldn't advertise. There was no opening to be able to do this. And it was shortly after that that we took the opening and got into that. So a lot of it has to do not necessarily by a plan. It has to do by the world changed for lawyers. And once advertising became legal, it was a long period of evolving. But that's really the catalyst. Without that, I would have just had to be a regular lawyer and not do what I did, at least as far as advertising.
And so would you advocate that? I mean, for any of the attorneys that are watching someone who's in the field of law and considering developing a very successful law practice, it sounds to me like you're saying that advertising and having a good advertising campaign to promote your services is key.
It's a key, but it was also a key, and it's something that you could understand. At the time when we started this in the 80s, there was 3 television stations that you had to go on, and you were either on one of those stations or you weren't really on, and buying advertising on television was cheap. The whole game has changed today. For someone to get into and be able to do this today, it would be altogether different financially. But the model would be totally different. That's one of the advantages of doing something, and I wasn't first. I clearly wasn't first to do advertising. Really even in the city at that time, but certainly in the country.
But you also, maybe not first, really though, created a brand that people identify. If they're injured
if they're looking for an attorney, they're going to call you. I mean, you make it very clear and very simple with your approach in terms of reaching people and letting them know when they need help to call your law firm.
Yeah, I think that that's true. And I think we determined very early on that there was a tremendous need, that everybody thinks that lawyers are a dime a dozen, and maybe they are a dime a dozen. But what I mean by that is everybody doesn't have the same access to lawyers. People that don't have the financial wherewithal for them to think about hiring a lawyer. I remember when we started advertising, the main things that we concentrated on were not how good we were. It was free call, free legal advice, so that the people who are worried about, I can't go see a lawyer, where am I going to get the money to be able to do this? That's basically where the appeal came. That's where the idea behind, not our idea, but the people that got involved in the beginning, was that there was a certain denial of access, that people that didn't have the financial wherewithal didn't feel free to get a lawyer. That was the concept, by going out on television at that time and saying, we got an 800 number, it won't cost you. Remember, it used to cost a lot of money to make a telephone call. It didn't cost any money, and we gave you free advice, and our pitch, and it still is, and if necessary, you want us to, we'll come to you. Well, that's a different concept, and that was the concept, still carries over today.
You realized that there was a certain strategy that you needed to employ at that time, and it served you well.
Absolutely.
In all of those years. You've grown a practice now where you have several partners and obviously a large staff. But when you started, it was just you. Why law? Why did you choose this as a field?
Okay. First of all, when I grew up, I was born in Connellsville, Pennsylvania, Fayette County. Moved to Pittsburgh when I was about 6 or 7 years old. And I grew up in a family where my father had a 5th grade education. Very much the immigrant experience, which is, I want my children to have the advantages that I didn't have. He came over from, it was Russia, it's now Poland, but came over, and when I grew up in my house, I had an older sister and an older brother. By the time I came to start choosing, my brother was in medical school, and my father said, what do you want to be, a doctor or a lawyer? Went to Penn State, got a C in chemistry, so now I had no choice, I had to be a lawyer. It's the truth. I mean, it sounds so silly, but it's really the truth. In my family, it was, well, C in chemistry, you're not going to get into medical school first semester at Penn State. So, and my mother always said, and this is the truth, she said to me, you could talk your way out of a paper bag, and therefore you've got a gift of gab, and you could talk us into anything, use it someday in a profession, and I think that she was right.
It served you well. See, that C
Yes,
served you well as well.
Absolutely. That's the key to my success, is getting that C in chemistry.
Started as a criminal defense attorney.
Yes.
Made some changes along the way.
Yeah.
What precipitated that?
Well, I was a public defender, an assistant public defender in 1968, and I did that for 2 years. When I graduated, not when I graduated law school, but about a year and a half later, I got a job as an assistant public defender. I was in court every day for 2 years, became a criminal lawyer, because that's what public defenders did. They represented people who couldn't afford a lawyer, and the whole system was basically new at that time. Over the next 15, 16, 17 years, I was a criminal lawyer. I was happy doing it, but it became difficult to spend all of your time at the jail. Not joking, because when people are in jail, you have to go to see them in jail. And I was representing an element of people. Everybody deserved to have legal counsel, but I couldn't see myself spending the rest of my life doing this. At the same time, advertising came into being. There was an opening, and in fact, that's when it all started. Back in 1982, the drunk driving laws in Pennsylvania had changed, and I put an ad in the Pittsburgh Press and the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette that said, this big, know your rights, and people gravitated towards it, because up until that time, if you were picked up for drunk driving and somebody wasn't killed or seriously hurt, this was handled at a magistrate's office. You got off. The law changed, and at that time, we started to advertise. And within 1 year, from a simple little ad in the newspaper, we built the largest drunk driving practice in the city of Pittsburgh, because nobody had any experience. I remember Cindy Donnell, who was my first employee, who is a partner now. In fact, she owns a law firm and I work for her. But is one of them. We went to a seminar in Cleveland, Ohio, on how to try these cases, how to work out things. It worked out fine, and we started to do that. After I saw the popularity of advertising, I said, what I don't want to do is spend the rest of my life doing drunk driving cases. And that's when we got involved. I'd handled accident cases as a lawyer, but it wasn't a specialty. And that's when I started to do that. And we, instead of being in one paper, we made a decision at that time to go out into all the local newspapers. And at one time, I think we were in about 40 local newspapers in Western Pennsylvania. And we were getting all these calls. And then in 1986, made the decision, I don't want to be in the newspaper anymore, I want to be a television star. And that's when we went to Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and we started to see what would happen on television. And the rest is history. I mean, at that time, we really didn't have a law firm of any size, anything, but that was the explosion that took place, was going in television, especially places like Cambria County, Blair County, those places. They didn't have anybody on television. We were the first. We went in mass. As I like to say, we just went to the bank and said, give us all your money so we can pay the TV stations. But there's a certain amount of truth and not truth in that statement. But that's kind of how the whole thing started. It's a little bit serendipity. I mean, you'd like to take and say, oh, I had this whole plan, I knew what I was doing. No.
But as you pointed out at the very beginning, you said there really was no plan, but what was in place was the opportunity to take advantage of something when you saw it happening and then follow through. And at that time, as you point out, that advertising on television and in newspaper totally changed the course of your business.
It changed the whole dynamics. At the time, Dareth, when I started doing this, for the first 4 or 5 years, I was a pariah in Pittsburgh. The lawyers would not talk to me. They said, I'm not professional, I've sold out. We had to worry about people even talking to us. But what we found out was the only ones who really couldn't stand the advertising was the lawyers, because there's an old expression, I get mean when you mess with my green. Okay.
Well, we're going to talk more about what happened when you got mean because they messed with your green, and the whole issue of really being a pariah in an industry that, you know, clearly you set the stage for, when we come back.
Are you interested in learning more about podcasting and video podcasting and how you can build your brand, influence, and income through podcasting? I'd be happy to help. In fact, you can schedule a complimentary discovery session with me. Really simple. Just go to podcastingandyou.com. Leave me your name and your email. You might want to check out one of my upcoming trainings as well, or simply send me an email at info@darethchisholm.com, and we'll get some time scheduled to discover how podcasting can help you grow your business and your brand. CTC Booking Travel and Entertainment Cruise Productions, the world's leader in full-ship charter music cruises, announces 5 cruises featuring the best in jazz music entertainment. The Signature Cruise, Smooth Jazz Cruise, the Jazz Cruise, 80s Cruise, and Gospel Music Cruise. Sail for 7 days with the finest music and entertainment artists in the world. Go to jazzcruisecatalog.com and book your cruise today. When it comes to food, family, and tradition, Atria's is your dining destination. Atria's has a passion for food, and it all starts with our culinary trained chefs. From the made-from-scratch rubs and dressings to the best in the Burr crab cakes, Atria's prides itself in serving honest and real food. Come and see what makes us different at one of our 8 locations. We're now offering private dining, to-go, and full-service catering. Atria's, we're always changing courses.
Hello, I'm Dr. Vonda Wright. I'm an orthopedic surgeon and the medical director of the UPMC Lemieux Sports Complex. And you're watching Hustle and Heart TV with Dareth Chisholm.
So Edgar, we were talking a little bit about you get mean when someone messes with your green, but more importantly, just this idea that at the time that you really began to plant the seeds of advertising your practice, that there were other attorneys in town that they didn't take too kindly to that.
Not only did attorneys not take kindly to it, they were openly hostile. I mean by hostile, what's a good lawyer like Edgar Snyder prostituting himself and doing these type of things that is so unprofessional? I once was in the Bar Association of Pennsylvania with 500 lawyers, had a lawyer say in front of the whole crowd that Edgar Snyder is more responsible for ruining the practice of law than any single person in the state of Pennsylvania right now, based upon his advertising and the way he conducts himself. And I remember the quote. He said, he's the kind of person that if I go to cocktail parties, the first thing people want to talk about is the terrible person. And I remember standing up, and the first thing that I said at that time was, thank God I don't go to the same parties. But that was the tenor, but only from lawyers. Mm-hmm. The public, advertising. If the public doesn't like the product, they don't buy it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's pretty basic.
You were clearly still growing a successful practice. People were listening to the ads, coming to you. You were getting results for them. That's what matters.
If you don't get results, advertising does you absolutely no good.
Did you care at all about what they were saying, or did it really matter and you kept laying the groundwork? Because now attorneys are doing exactly what you're doing.
Every big law firm in the United States markets. I mean, it's part of they don't all go on television. Everybody markets. But 30 years ago, there was no such thing. And did I really care? Let me tell you how much I cared. I used to say a prayer every night. People would still hate me, lawyers, so that I didn't have any competition. But I knew that there would come a day when the Bar Association would ask me to do a seminar, and then the gig was up, okay? So it not only didn't bother me, I liked it. I liked the fact that they were because I realized from a business standpoint, boy, all these lawyers, and you're the only one basically that's all over the place on television. Give me another 5 years, I won't have to work, I'll retire. It didn't happen. And I'm still not retired.
Yeah, but we will talk about this exit strategy that you've put into place and how successful that's been. But before we do that, let's just step back a second, because I think there's a message here for our audience, and that is that when you feel as though you are on the edge and you're pressing against something that has the potential to explode, but the competition or the people around you have the naysayers that are out there, that you should stay forward and stay committed to what you believe is good for you.
It's been the guiding principle for what I did during those first, let's say, 10 years. It was proceeding forward. I used to joke at that time, and I used to say, I'm going to the bank and putting all my money into television and paying for all these commercials and everything. And I had a nightmare, and the nightmare was I was going to fail, go into bankruptcy, and all the lawyers who knew how to run businesses would say at that particular period of time, oh my God, he just didn't know anything. He went bankrupt. They took it over and they made it a success. So that used to drive me from a business standpoint. How am I going to do this? Yes, you've got to stay the course. And I had to stay the course and not let the noise interfere. And I didn't let the noise interfere.
And that's an important point, because so often business owners of any caliber, and we're not just talking about attorneys, but anyone who's set out to have their own business and be an entrepreneur has all kinds of noise. They've got the noise from the people around them, and then they've got that inner chatter that sometimes creates doubt and fear. And we have to get past that.
Absolutely, and you have to do it. One of the big things that was very helpful in the beginning of this was there was some groups that nationally put together places for lawyers who were doing marketing on television. And we used to get together with lawyers from all over the country. We would talk shop and talk what worked in different locations and be able to see what was working, so we were able to take advantage if somebody did something in Los Angeles and it was working, maybe to try those types of things. It was kind of like a trade association, and that was very helpful to get other people's ideas, because you can't know everything in the beginning. You really don't have that kind of background.
Yeah. You talked in the beginning again about not having a plan, but clearly you had a plan for exiting, and part of that is in its process now. You're still very active in your law firm, but what you shared with me is that you knew that obviously you can't do this forever, and as much as you enjoy what you do, you know at some point you're going to have to leave what you've built in place. And there are particular strategies and steps that one should take as they're planning that exit strategy.
That's absolutely correct. And I think what I realized was that it always had been something in the back of my mind as I was doing this. How do you know when to get off the mountain? Okay, there's no plan. Nobody says this is when it is. How do you do this? And I remember talking with people that I was using for advice at that particular time to ask them what to do. And I decided I had at that time 4 major partners who had all been with me for, at that time, over 20, 25 years. And they had been so instrumental in the success of this business because I was running a business after a while. I wasn't in the courtroom any longer. They were in the courtroom. They were the ones that were doing a lot of the litigation work. And I said, how am I going to know what to do? How am I going to know when to step away from this? And I think that it was probably back in 2007 or 2008 that I put together a plan of how to do this. And over the next 6, 7, 8 years, I followed that plan. And at the end of 2014, I didn't get out, meaning that I'm still the spokesperson, and I'm still involved in that part of the business, and I'm still being asked advice. They don't necessarily have to follow it, but they're still asking my advice. And I set that up. That was important to me to not be tied into this thing. Also from a standpoint of what I do at this one. I do a lot of volunteer work. I do a lot of other things, and I wanted to have time to pursue those types of things that were more in a community-oriented than just being out there being the spokesperson.
We'll talk about how you put your team together and your partners and the family that is Edgar Snyder and Associates in just a moment. But I'd love to talk about now that you have some extra time,
right,
because you're in the process of this exit strategy. What are those things that you enjoy doing? I mean, tell me what lifestyle is like for you now, and that you're not as busy as you used to be, or maybe not so much.
I love to get up in the morning and work out, okay, and not have to be somewhere. And whether it's swimming, and for 35 years I was a runner. I'm not a runner any longer. My knees don't want to run anymore. But biking, doing the things. So first of all, that type of lifestyle, being able to just have the time to travel and do things. And I used to travel a lot. But when you own a company and you own a business, you travel, but your head is somewhere else. Now I don't have to be in that thing. But the thing that I really did, and I started this 10 or 15 years before, was volunteer work in the community. And I did a lot of stuff, especially in the Jewish community, and I was able to develop this passion in many, many times going to the state of Israel. I set up programs at that time in Russia and different things for poor people, for people who couldn't afford to have the same benefits. I have felt very strongly that, but for the grace of God, there goes I. And some people don't have this advantage. Doing community work, I think at one time before I was still running the company and owning the company, I'd say that about 40% of my time was doing volunteer work. And I still had plenty of time to do the stuff in the business. I had good people working there. But I think that whole idea of relaxation time, time to travel, giving back to community, because I really have felt strongly that if it's not, if you don't take the time to give back, then what's it all about? It's always been something that I felt inside.
It's a piece of that puzzle that is paramount for you in terms of creating this beautiful tapestry called Edgar Snyder.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. You do have a family and a team around you, and I want to talk about the importance of really picking the right partners and the right team members, from the secretaries all the way to the partners, and why that's so very important. And I also want to encourage you as you're watching this to find us on iTunes. If you're watching and enjoying this, find us on iTunes, download, subscribe, write a review. We'd love to have you do that. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. You can leave us a review as well. We'll be sure to read about it, right?
Absolutely.
And we'll be right back with more.
Are you looking for a way to advertise your business, product, or service? Why not do it here on Hustle and Heart TV? We'd be happy to send you our media kit for show sponsorship and advertising. Reach out to us at info@dariethchisholm.com or give us a call at 412-692-1600, and we'll send you a media kit with all the information. The success in selling your home and getting the right price lies in the crux of your agent's ability to maximize your home's exposure to the largest number of qualified buyers. Each year, Dion Malish helps a family buy or sell a home every 5.5 days, so she's confident that her proven home selling strategies will sell your home. Dion and her team are not your traditional real estate agents. Unlike many agents who pound a yard sign, post to the MLS, then sit back and wait for your home to sell itself, Dion uses a proven, repeatable system to sell your home for up to 18% more in less time. Dion recently published 25 tips for selling a home in Pittsburgh, which is also available on Amazon. If you're thinking of selling your home, you can get a free copy by visiting www.25tipspittsburgh.com. You can also contact her at 724-554-3514 or email her at dion@northwood.com.
The award-winning Savoy restaurant has become synonymous with fine dining, upscale ambiance, and a great destination for local and national celebrities to enjoy the night in style. The Savoy has won multiple Savor Pittsburgh awards for its delicious menu. Our wine list was awarded Wine Spectator's 2012 Award of Excellence, and the Savoy has also won the American Institute of Architects People's Choice Award for its beautiful architecture and design. For dinner reservations and more info, log on to savoypgh.com.
What's up, everybody? My name is Ime Alaquiva, Emmy Award-winning creative professional, and I'll see you on the next episode of Hustle and Heart TV with Darrius Chisholm. Let's go.
Edgar, we talked about leadership and leverage and lifestyle, and a little bit about loving your journey and how you're giving back to the community. But you don't do this alone. You've built a team around you. You had to pick and choose from the very beginning to where you are now, those partners and those people who make up Edgar Snyder and Associates. How do you do that, and how do you formulate those types of bonds that last?
Back in the 80s, started to hire people, and some people I could see right away that they were very, very good. They were all young lawyers who were just getting their own experience. They were trying to make their own marks at that time. I didn't pick anybody out as a partner. It was probably 10 or 15 years before anybody really became a partner. But I realized that to run Edgar Snyder and Associates, to run a business, because we were already up to about 120, 130 people, 30-some lawyers. That's a full-time job. I needed people who really could do the litigation, who understood how to do the legal work, and be able to put this together. I put a team together at that time of people. By the time they became partners of mine, they were all there probably at least 15 years, 20 years. It was like a family. You're with these people every day. You know their ins, you know their outs. They were all terrific lawyers. They're great lawyers today. But at the time, I recognized that I'm only part of this equation. I can't do it all. I can't go out there and be in courtrooms and be everything and seeing clients. Running a business is what I had to do. I had to rely on these people, the people that were the best at it, the ones who knew what to do, who, at the end there was no question in my mind. They could run circles around me in terms of the legal aspects of things. I understood it, but I needed to rely on them, because if they didn't do a good job, overnight you can ruin yourself in the practice of law by taking a case, doing a bad job, screwing up people, pardon my language, clients that you represented. That was the most important key for me. They had to do a good job for these people, because people that are hiring us are really in need of some of them, terribly injured or worse, death in the families, needed the money. That was the key. Once I had the right people, it was a matter of giving them more and more responsibility until they started to manage the company and I started to back away. And by the time I left, I had somebody, a partner at that time, who was the head of litigation. When I say left, by the time I was no longer in charge of running the company, because I'm still there, I haven't left. But by the time I stepped away with running it, being the CEO of the company, I had the people in place who knew what to do. I had wonderful, not just lawyers, wonderful administrative people. It's trial and error. I finally found people that were really, really good. So that my key was, could I go away for 2 weeks, and if I didn't call, was that business still going to be successful? Yeah, sometimes it was more successful while I was away. But that's kind of a key of this whole thing. It's all about the people.
You have to. You have to think when you're growing a business, and especially of an enterprise of your size, to let go of the reins a bit, to allow
Absolutely.
your team to rise. And in many cases, and I don't know if you agree with this, but some of it also is to find people who are smarter than you, more talented, much better in what it is that they do, so you can grow and evolve.
I used to joke and used to say that in the very beginning of this thing, when we set it up, we had an idea of, we used to hire all these claims adjusters from insurance companies, and they knew this business inside out. And at one time I said, oh man, this business would be great if I didn't have to hire any lawyers. Then the things started to get more complex. We started to get bigger cases, and I needed these lawyers. And one of my keys was, I didn't say if they're smarter than I am. I just said if they could handle the case better than I could handle. It wasn't very long before I realized they could handle all the cases better than I was handling the case. That's a key. I mean, it's absolutely essential in doing business that you find and surround yourself. Whether you want to say they're smarter than you, let's just say that there's things that they do that I couldn't do. Okay, gives me a little bit of smarts left.
Yeah. What would you say has been the biggest challenge that you faced over the years? I mean, if you had to really sit down and think, wow, what was it that really was the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge was we're representing hundreds and hundreds of people whose lives depend on what we do. You can't make a mistake on any of these things, because if you do, it's no different if the doctor that's operating on somebody didn't do it right and the person died or ended up with we have people's hands and their lives are in our hands. How do you do this thing, not just have a few cases, but have lots of work? How do you set up quality control? My nightmare was doing something wrong, that somebody's life would be messed up as a result of what I had done. And how do you live with that? That's always been, it still exists today. How do you do the job right so that the people get the services that they need? That's a challenge.
But you've been doing it, and I know that many people face that same challenge when they think about their business, no matter what it is.
Sure.
And so what would you say is key, that even when you have to face that challenge, you still get through it?
Hire the right people. Have the right people there doing what has to be done. Make sure that you surround yourself with very, very talented people. Then you can at least
Mitigate
sleep at
those
night.
challenges,
Well, I used to
yeah.
call it was my sleep at night. If I could go to sleep at night and not have to worry, that's how I used to make sure that I had good people.
Yeah, definitely. What would be a key piece of advice that you'd offer a new up-and-coming attorney, someone who's watching Hustle and Heart TV and they're now inspired by your story and they say, yeah, I can keep going, I want to change the course.
I think one of the things that I've had many chances to mentor, and I used to say to people, and I still do say to people, don't be afraid to fail, okay? Because if you're always conservative and you're afraid to fail, yeah, and you may fail, but you have to be able to take chances. When I went out of the practice of criminal law and started this law firm and started to do these things, and there was a lot of criticism professionally about doing it, you can't be afraid to fail. You have to be able to take chances. At the time, I was kind of living a little bit on the edge. It was a whole new media thing. It was a whole new way. How do you practice law? You have to be able to not be afraid. I think I've read books, I'm sure you have, about entrepreneurs. What's the common thing? It's taking chances sometimes, believing in yourself, but not being afraid to fail. And I wasn't afraid to fail, and so far,
So far, so good. Absolutely, yeah. Well, with that, we're going to wrap. But I do want
Okay.
to say it has been such a pleasure getting to know you and how you've built your practice and why it's so important to consider taking risks, not being afraid to fail, and getting out there and being the first, if you will, in the field to doing things.
Yeah,
So we
well,
do
thank you.
appreciate that.
I enjoyed the interview. I didn't feel like I was being interviewed.
Good. We want it to be conversation. That's what's most
We got
important.
conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, Darius.
We'll have more information about Edgar Snyder at my website at hustleandhearttv.com. You can go there, leave us your email address so that you can get additional show updates and some tidbits that Edgar will share with us, as well as some of his favorite books. We'll make those available for you. And thanks so much for watching this episode of Hustle and Heart TV.
Are you looking for a career that pays great money, working with a fun group of people? I know, sounds too good to be true, right? Hi, I'm Troy Miles of the Miles Group.
We will train you, help you get your license, even supply leads. No cold calling.
I've been here 2 years and earned 6 figures this year.
I love my job.
I love the freedom and being my own boss.
If you would like to work among friends, have a great time, and make good money, call us.
Find out more at tmilesgroup.com.
Welcome to the Pittsburgh Marriott City Center, where all of your meeting, events, and travel needs can be met.
Imagine as a planner not having to imagine anything because we do it all for you. You give us the purpose of the event, we provide you our very own unique and distinct vision. Flavors, setups, and colors will come alive and your attendees or guests will be talking. Whether you're celebrating an accomplishment or launching a new idea, we have already imagined the meeting for you.
Check us out online on Facebook at Pittsburgh Marriott City Center or call today at 412-471-4000 to make your next event brilliant.